Esse é o problema. Okay. Bom dia, boa tarde a todos. Hoje é um dia muito especial, de poesia ao meio-dia, junto com Susan Roy, como sempre, todas as quartas-feiras do fim do mês. E essa quarta-feira nós estamos também fazendo parte da 11ª Jornada de Estudos Irlandeses, organizada pela ABEI, pela Associação Brasileira de Estudos Irlandeses, cujo tema principal é Celebrando Literaturas e Histórias. E temos aqui conosco hoje os organizadores, Alessandra Rigonato, da Universidade de Tocantins, e o professor Sânio Santos, da Universidade Federal da Bahia, que vai nos introduzir a jornada, que já está em curso, iniciou ontem, e hoje que tem várias atividades interessantes. E entre elas, vamos ter poesia ao meio-dia. Alessandra, por favor.
Bom dia, boa tarde a todos. É com muita alegria que estou aqui hoje participando do Poesia do Meio-Dia e que faz parte da programação da nossa jornada. Essa manhã tivemos uma palestra com a professora Valéria Medeiros, com o Crime Fiction, Contemporary Crime Fiction in Irish Literature, e o professor Sânio fez a mediação, e na parte da tarde teremos as comunicações, às 14 horas. Eu vou colocar depois no chat o link da página do evento. E também o mural de Ulisses, feito pela Universidade Federal do Tocantins. Eu sou da Universidade Federal do Norte do Tocantins, que agora que se separou, que vem se separando desde 2015, né? Mas agora está separada, né? Nós somos do Norte, uma partition from the... Então, eu estou na cidade de Araguaína, que vou descobrindo a cada dia, fica numa região muito especial. Acho que it's a very special region called Bico do Papagaio. If I travel west 1 hour, I am in the state of Maranhão. If I travel east 2 hours, I am in the state of Pará. So we receive students from not only from Tocantins state, but also from Maranhão, from Pará. It's a very interesting area. And we are holding online this year, but probably in the future, we were talking, Sânio and I, in the future we can have in-person event here in Federal University of the North of Tocantins. Então, a nossa programação da tarde com o mural de Ulisses, às 16 horas, e o professor Sânio pode comentar da programação até às 8 da noite.
Isso, mas primeiramente eu queria dizer, né, agradecer a Alessandra pelo convite, né, tem sido um prazer cooperar com você, não é a primeira vez que a gente trabalha junto, mas assim, é uma parceria de algum tempo já, e que eu espero que se estenda até décadas aí para frente.
Também. Munir e Laura, seremos segunda versão.
Então, assim...
New generation, so that's it.
Sim. E, assim, para mim é muito importante estar fazendo esses eventos, principalmente porque eu falei sobre isso na abertura, e eu falo novamente, é muito importante que a gente promova os estudos irlandeses para as novas gerações, principalmente para os alunos de graduação que estão começando agora e que, na verdade, às vezes já conhecem alguma coisa sobre a Irlanda e que nem avaliam a possibilidade de que podem estudar a Irlanda e que podem se debruçar por isso e fazer disso uma carreira na academia. Bom, algo que vai ser muito interessante, né, que vai ser a apresentação do Ryan Shaughnessy. Ele representou a Irlanda no Eurovision Song Contest de 2018 com a canção Together, né? Ele fez os irlandeses orgulhosos, né, chegando à final, né? O que tem sido raro para a Irlanda chegar à final, mas ele conseguiu, foi muito bem avaliado pelos jurados e pelo público também, conseguiu uma posição respeitável e ele continua a carreira dele, vai lançar um EP ainda no início do próximo mês. Então, é um artista muito interessante, tem belíssimas canções e ele foi gentil o suficiente para aceitar o nosso convite e performar no nosso fórum, né? Uma outra coisa também que vai acontecer é a apresentação da professora Lucy, que vai ser às 7, né? A professora Lucy, ela fez um trabalho, né, intertextual, onde a gente vai ver uma performance, né, da Molly Bloom, né? Vai ser uma versão da Molly Bloom em vídeo e dança, né? Então, assim, é muito interessante a gente ver isso. É um trabalho muito delicado que a professora Lucy fez. E com certeza merece muito, muito respeito e admiração da gente.
Muito obrigada, Sânio e Alessandra. Many thanks for being here with us and for having included our program Poesia ao Meio-Dia in the Jornada. And I would like to thank Mariana Bolfarini, the president of ABEI, and Elisa Brantes, the vice president of ABEI, that makes possible these jornadas and symposiums that will be this year in Buenos Aires, Argentina. So this is keep in touch with us through the Chair of Irish Studies and through ABEI, where all information is there. And now I would like to welcome Susan Hoy for this session. Thanks a lot as ever for all what you are doing with the chair and reading your beautiful selection of poetry. Thanks a lot, Susan.
Thank you, Laura. Bom dia, or boa tarde a todos e todas. So, of course, another Bloomsday has come, and Ulysses has been with us now for 100 years. So today I'm going to present to you some poetry, well, not Joyce's own poetry, but rather some poetry that's connected to Bloomsday or James Joyce or Ulysses itself. Here in Brasilia, for the centenary of Ulysses, we had the pleasure of launching a postage stamp to commemorate this significant date, and it's available all over Brazil very soon. So you can all go out there and buy the stamp and send your letters. And I'm sure you've all heard of the wonderful murals that have been painted in universities all over Brazil in the project Ulysses Pelos Olhos Brasileiros. We're especially proud of it, and also this wonderful interest that it's generated in Ulysses for its celebration of 100 years. So today, the first poem I'm going to share with you is a poem by W.B. Yeats, Who Goes with Fergus. It's a lyric poem written in 1892 or so. And in this poem, Yeats references this mystical Irish king and poet who is Fergus. And he wants to encourage people to focus on the mystical beauty of the universe. And in Yeats's play, of course, this poem was made into a song, and this song was sung to soothe the title character, Countess Kathleen, after she sells her soul to the devil. Stephen Dedalus repeatedly thinks of this poem throughout Ulysses, and he sang it for his mother on her deathbed. He especially remembers the lines, "And no more turn aside and brood upon love's bitter mystery." So, who goes with Fergus? Who will drive with Fergus now and pierce the deep wood's woven shade and dance upon the level shore? Young man, lift up your russet brow and lift your tender eyelids, maid, and brood on hopes and fear no more. and no more turn aside and brood upon love's bitter mystery. For Fergus rules the brazen cars, and rules the shadows of the wood, and the white breast of the dim sea, and all dishevelled wandering stars. My next poem is called In Bewley's. Now, Bewley's is a cafe in Dublin. It first opened in 1890 in Dublin, and there young James Joyce became a frequent visitor. It was regarded as the afternoon resort of the intelligentsia. I suppose that's because of its proximity to Trinity College, Dublin. But to this day, it remains on Grafton Street, and it's become a quintessential part of Dublin, having been around for so long. And in this first poem that I will read to you, called Bewley's, it's the poem speaks of a young man who has found his voice, and he's inspired by Yeats and Joyce, and I suppose who knows what awaits. The poem is written by Malcolm Geet, who was London Irish, as far as I remember, and called In Bewley's. I look up, hands around my coffee cup, on Grafton Street in Bewley's coffee shop. Blue Mountain, Java, and Colombian, the labels are a journey on their own. Then the aroma as they're ground by hand, beans broken open, out of every land, separate savours float across this room of dark mahogany to a softer bloom of stained glass windows, where I sit apart, warming my hands and waiting on my heart to call me to adventure. I have found my voice, Yeats in my pocket, backpack full of Joyce. I'm 19, and it's 1977. My next poem is called Lower Drumcondra. Drumcondra is an area in Dublin, and it was commissioned for the Bloomsday Festival in 2021 and written by Eilish Ní Ghríobhna, a very well-known Irish poet who actually writes in both Irish and English. And it takes us on a little walk around Dublin to places of significance to Joyce, as does Ulysses. Lower Drumcondra by Eilish Ní Ghríobhna. Griffith Park has beauty, willows, dandelions, and tumbling chestnuts, choirs of children laughing. In the bubbling river, a heron always stands, watching on a rock, like any artist. These shining slopes are built upon a dump, once the Millmount Hills, where lumps of rubbish, mouldy, offal, mickey mud. How it must have stunk. He spread his wings and headed south through Dorset Street and Eccles, North Richmond, which is blind, and on and on and on. 16 months, 16 moves before he reached the boat. Not quite a house for every year, but close. When he was 12, he lived on the riverside. He saw a heron, legs delicate and long, enchanting midstream in the land of Tundish. She stands in the river still, sublime upon her rock. listening to the best English, the ardent river song. The Joyce's house is gone. James Joyce was born on the 2nd of February 1882 in a house on Brighton Square in Rathgar. Well, actually, as most people observe, Brighton Square isn't actually a square, it's a triangle, which is very Irish of it. But the house was relatively new when the Joyces moved in. But Joyce often references Brighton Square in his work. And actually, he references most of the houses in which he lived. But especially in the episode Penelope in Ulysses, Molly Bloom thinks of her early encounters with Poldy. And she says, the very first opportunity he got a chance in Brighton Square, running into my bedroom, pretending the ink got on his hands. So there's a very nice poem called Brighton Square 1882. It was written by Gerard Smith, who was then the poetry editor of the Irish Times, again to celebrate Joyce's birth. So I'll just give you the poem Brighton Square, 1882, by Gerard Smith. He would become a keeper of superstitions, subvert a language, tilt its axes, play God with all his ready characters. Not one of them was fictional. But first, a crooning father, a mother who believed in miracles. Between them, in his cradle, a son, already listening to the operatic arias so often sung in Brighton Square. He was the talk of the village, of the tidy gardens, a child born on a nascent day of spring, too late for the feast of St. Bridget, but quickly carried to the christening font, where he saw his own reflection and was spellbound by the image. There was rejoicing in the square, neighbour watching neighbour to see who would bring the first gift to his crib, who would ask to hold him and to whisper in his ear, out there you'll find your river, your city, the bedrock of your life. I've just finished reading the book Nora, which I found very, very enjoyable. For those of you who haven't read it yet, it's it's a very easy inroad into the life of James Joyce. It is a fictional narrative, but it's very much based on the papers and the works of James Joyce. And it's told from the point of view of his wife, Nora Barnacle. And when I think of her, I think of how brave she was and how for that time she managed to step on that boat and go into a life abroad with James, who she didn't know for that very long. And I think this poem written by Jane Clark just gives us that wonderful feeling and that sense of adventure that Nora had. It's called Night Boat, North Wall Quay, 8th of October, 1904, by Jane Clark. She didn't travel west to bend her head beneath the cottage lintel. She didn't carry lilies to the dead or bid her mother farewell. She didn't pack a wedding dress of silk brocade. No satin nightgown trimmed with lace. She didn't linger in her attic bedroom, wistful for laughter with friends, but sauntered up the gangway in wide-brimmed hat and borrowed coat. Saw Jim ahead on the deck, jagged chin, blue-eyed, smiling. She whispered to herself, "I'll take my chances with him." She certainly did take her chances, and I have to say, it's a very nice story of her life with James Joyce, all the hardships and the terrible times that both of them went through, but also the wonderful friendship and love that bound them together. When I was looking, I remembered that one of my favourite poets, Paul Durcan, had written a poem called Ulysses, and I was looking for it over the last week. And I found this little limerick called Ulysses, which nicely sums up the book for you, those of you who haven't had the chance to read the book itself. A limerick is a very short 5-lined verse, which, well, the origins of it, like, of course, people think it may have come from Limerick in Ireland, and there is some evidence to point to that, but actually it seems it may have come from England, although Edward Lear is given a lot of time with his writing in this sort of form. He's not really the person who invented the limerick. Anyway, Ulysses in a limerick. See what you think. There once was an artist called Stephen. With Homer, he tried to get even. So bloomed he walk around Dublin and talk and reflect upon what they believe in. So there's all you need to know about Ulysses in a nutshell. However, I do like, and I'm very fond of, the poetry of Paul Durcan, and he has written a wonderful poem called Ulysses, which really captures many of the different aspects and the difficulty people had then of reading Ulysses, the reticence in which it was received in Ireland, but also the discovery of the wonderful writing and the wonderful way that it was written by Paul and indeed by his father. So I will just read this one for you, called Ulysses by Paul Durcan. I am hiding from my father on the roof of Joyce's tower in Santa Cove. He is downstairs in the gloom of the Joyce Museum, exchanging euphemisms with the curator, the poet, Michael Hartnett. Meteorological euphemisms, wet and cold for June. I am standing at the battlements. I am 18 years old. The battle is whether or not he will buy a copy of Ulysses. It is a battle about money, but it is also a battle about morality, or morals, as it is called. It began this morning at the breakfast table when I asked him for 21 shillings to buy a copy of Ulysses. He refused, on the grounds that on top of it being an outrageous sum of money, which a poorly paid judge could ill afford, it was a notoriously immoral book. Even the most liberal-minded Jesuits had condemned Ulysses as being blasphemous as well as pornographic. My mother jumped round from the kitchen sink. Give him the money for the wretched book and let the pair of you stop this nonsense. For pity's sake, will there ever be peace and sense in this house? My father stormed out of the kitchen, the Irish Independent under his arm. I'll not be party to subsidizing that blackguard, bringing the works of blasphemy into this house in the year of our Lord 1963. I will not be an accessory to blasphemy. I caught the 46A bus out to Joyce's tower, newly opened as a museum. The curator offered to share with me a carafe of vodka left over from the literary soiree of the night before. It was the day after Bloomsday, Monday, 17th of June, 1963. We sat in a compatible silence, contemplatively, affably, until upheaval of gravel eradicated reverie. I rushed to the door and glimpsed my father at the foot of the iron steps. I climbed onto the roof, hoping to hide from him up there in the marine fog, foghorns bleating in the bay. I heard footsteps behind me. I know it is he. He declares, I suppose we will have to buy that book. What did you say the name of it is? I tell him that the name of it is Ulysses. I follow him down the staircase, and he submits. Mr. Hartnett, I understand you stock copies of a book entitled Ulysses. I would like to purchase one of the same. Certainly, your lordship, certainly, replies the ever-courteous Chinese-eyed curator. When from his wing-backed chair behind his desk he takes from a drawer a copy of the jade-jacketed Ulysses, the Bodley Head edition, my father asks him if he would have brown paper with which to wrap the green satanic novel. Make a parcel of it. The curator peers into a wastepaper basket made by the blind, as if peering down into a bottomless lift shaft, casts a funicular, questioning second glance at my father before fishing out crumpled bags of brown paper, which the night before had ferried bottles of vodka. He lays them on the desktop and smooths them, taking pains to be obsequiously extra punctilious, extra fastidious. Formally, he hands it over to my father, as if delivering to some abstract and intractable potentate a gift of an old pair of shoes. My father pronounces, "Thank you, Mr. Hartnett." The curator, at his most extravagantly unctuous, replied, "Very glad to be able to oblige you, your lordship." My father departed Joyce's tower with the book. The next day, when I asked my mother if she'd seen it, she said it was in their bedroom beside my father's bed. Her bed was beside the window, and his bed was between her bed and the wall. There it was, on his bedside table, Ulysses, with a bookmarker in it, a fruit gum wrapper, at the close of the opening episode. When a few weeks later I got to reading Ulysses myself, I found it as strange as my father and as discordant. It was not until 4 years later, when a musical friend gave me my first lessons, that Ulysses began to sing for me. And I began to sing for my father, "Daddy, Daddy, little man, I adore you. Thank you very much. That's my selection of poems for today. I hope you enjoyed them. Now we're going to leave you with a song that I actually made a recording myself of on a cell phone in Ireland for Bloomsday a year or two ago, when we were all locked up and we couldn't get together. So I have shared it with Laura, and we're going to share it with you today. So I hope you enjoy it. The song is called Love's Old Sweet Song, and it's actually the song that Molly Bloom was going to sing at her concert. And the song echoes right through Ulysses. Many, many times is referred to and echoed throughout the text. So, as I say, I hope you enjoy it, and I will leave you with the song. Thank you. Once in the dear dead days beyond recall, when on the world the mist began to fall, out of the dreams that rose in happy throng, lo, to our hearts love sang an old sweet song. And in the dusk, where fell the firelight gleam, softly it wove itself into our dream. Just a song at twilight, when the lights are low, and the flickering shadows softly come and go. Though the heart be weary, sad the day and long, still to us at twilight comes love's old song, comes love's old sweet song. Even today we hear love's song of yore. Deep in our hearts it dwells forevermore. Footsteps may falter, weary grows our way, still we can hear it at the close of day. So till the end, when life's dim shadows fall, love will be found the sweetest song of all. Just a song at twilight, when the lights are low, and the flickering shadows softly come and go. Though the heart be weary, sad the day and long, still to us at twilight come love's old song, comes love's old sweet song.